Oh, you will, because, yeah. I do like things. I do like things.
Hello. Yes. It's fine. I just need to give a summary that please.
I don't know if the lights are on.
Yeah, that's all I know.
Yeah, oh, I know.
That's good. I think it's a great idea.
Yep. Yep. Oh, is this different than what I had?
Yeah, I put 1B
Where?
on my previous agenda. I made a typo.
Where?
For today's date, I put 18.
Oh, I didn't notice that.
I think it's today or something.
Good evening, everyone. Would you please join us in a salute to the flag? Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic which stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Pursuant to Section 5, Chapter 231, Public Laws 1975, this is to state for the record that adequate notice of this meeting has been provided to the public by posting and maintaining the annual notice of regular meetings on the bulletin board of the municipal building, by mailing the annual notice of regular meetings for 2017 to the News Record and Star Ledger in December 2016, and by filing said notice in the office of the Township Clerk.
Ms. Adams, Mrs. Larrier, Mr. Limbrick,
Here. Good night, Cece.
Mr. McGehee,
Here.
Mayor DeLuca.
Here.
Whereas Chapter 231, Public Laws of 1975, commonly known as the Open Public Meetings Act, requires all meetings of public bodies be open to the public. And whereas Section 7A provides that the governing body has the discretion to prohibit or regulate the active participation of the public at any meeting. And whereas the desire of the governing body to comply with the provision of this act, at the same time conduct its business in an orderly and expeditious manner. Now therefore be resolved by the Township Committee, Township Maplewood, does hereby prohibit, except as set forth in the formal agenda, active participation in deliberations of the governing body by the public, except as otherwise prescribed by law, does limit the public to the observations of the action and discussion of the governing body at all of its regular and special meetings.
So moved. Second.
Mr. Lembrick,
Yes.
Mr. McGehee,
Yes.
Mayor DeLuca.
Yes, thank you. And welcome to our Township Committee meeting of December 5th, 2017. I'll run through the agenda quickly. We're going to start with a public comment period and ask that only those items, please speak only on those items that are on the agenda. We will then go to the Board of Health meeting, followed by a short hearing for our community development block grant application. We'll then consider an ordinance on final passage, and this is to revise the penalty for overnight parking. And if you'd like to speak on that, we'll ask you to come up at that time when we have the hearing on that issue. Then we have 6 discussion items. The first being Library for the Future. We're going to talk about the current status and the Township Committee's intentions. I know some of you are here to talk about the library. What we'll do is have you come up at that time so that there'll be a continuity of conversation. You can come up, and then the Township Committee will have that conversation and that discussion item. We'll have the report from the Finance Committee. The third item will be a report on the December 1st court hearing on our settlement of affordable housing obligation. Discussing a moratorium to allow Maplewood homeowners to house refugees participating in the UN program, a refugee program. Fifth, we'll be doing an update on our request for proposals for executive search firms for our new township administrator. 6, we'll be discussing the inspection process regarding entering a homeowner's premise. And, I see 7 is we have a 7th issue, that's department head appointments. Okay. Then we have our consent agenda. We'll be awarding contracts for marketing recyclables, appointing 5 police officers, approving the towing license, awarding an IT and computer consulting service. We'll be certifying the annual audit. We'll be approving bills and claims. We'll be approving the corrective action plan for the 2016 audit, approving the refund of tax overpayments, budget transfers, authorizing the receipt of bids for recycling collection, reimbursing New Jersey American Water for some improvements to East Cedar Lane, and then we'll be approving the minutes of the November 21st open and closed meetings. We'll then have a second public comment period, and you can come up and speak to us on any item. We'll have administrative reports from elected officials, and then we will adjourn. So the first item will be public comment if there's anyone who would like to speak to the Township Committee on an agenda item. Yes. You can come up and just give us your name and address.
Craig Miller, 502 Prospect Street. One of the agenda items is an ordinance to repeal the requirement of a garage in one.
It's not on this meeting.
Okay.
It's going to be on the meeting of the 19th.
Okay. Was that noticed?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. The news record said it was on for today.
Okay. Yeah, well, initially, but you can certainly speak about it, but I just want to let you know it's not on the agenda. The hearing will be next meeting, the 19th, but you can certainly speak about it.
Okay. Whatever is most.
This is fine.
Yeah. I have a series of questions on it because I know it only took out, quote, 2 words of an ordinance, but I think it'll have a significant and lasting impact on our community. So first, I'll ask, what was the rationale for eliminating the requirement that one house and 2 house dwellings have a garage with 1 spot per dwelling?
We received a memo from the chair of the Board of Adjustment, Larry Seltzer, that are eliminating this. What was happening is that our code enforcement officials were citing homeowners for the condition of their garages. And people, they didn't have money to fix up the garage. So they were coming before the Board of Adjustment asking for a variance to take down the garage or not replace the garage if the garage had to be taken down. We looked at that issue. We were concerned about the expansion of homes if garages were eliminated. So what we did is we put new restrictions on lot coverage and building coverage, and believe that that would provide assurance that no one would take down the garage and just expand their house. The other thing is that we require a garage. We don't require a garage that a car can fit in anymore. Many of our garages are too small for the cars that we have. Most people, well, not most, but a lot of people don't even use their garage for storage of a car. It's storage of other things. So all in all, we felt that, and we looked also at the marketability and saw that having a garage was better for someone trying to sell their home, but that was not our decision. Overall, we thought that we wanted to introduce it to hear comments, and we thought that this was a way to solve a few problems, particularly with having garages that were unsightly, and that we thought was more of a detriment to the neighborhood than not having a garage on a property. That's a very long answer.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that, and it's a helpful answer. You know, I think the public noticed the change in this ordinance, but didn't notice a change in the lot coverage ordinance. And I agree with you that if the two are considered together, it might address some of the concerns that were in my mind. Is that changed ordinance available in print?
Yes, it was adopted a couple months ago. Yes, certainly you can get it from, it's also online, and you can get it from the clerk's office.
Right, okay. All right. Yeah, so maybe that addressed it, but what impact on the number of residents in the township do you think the elimination of garages might have, and is that something that was considered?
What do you mean by impact?
How many you think? How many are you asking?
Well, for instance, if you're not required to have a garage, you could convert your garage, assuming you comply with the construction code, into a bedroom for grandma, or bedroom or playroom for your children, or just an extra bedroom.
Well, that would be an accessory use, and that would not be allowed. You wouldn't be able to do that. I mean, the garage is a garage, and there's certain accessory uses that are allowed on the property. You know, some people have made their garages into tool sheds or, work spaces. Some people have made it into performance space or studio space for their own musical
Yeah, no, I think practice. I was addressing, I appreciate in a detached garage, you're not likely to turn it.
Oh, you're talking about an attached garage?
An attached garage would be a natural expansion if you don't have to maintain it as a garage. And there are communities surrounding us where that's done. And I'm not sure that's anticipated either by this ordinance or by a changed lot coverage. And it's not very expensive to convert the interior shell to a bedroom. I think if we're allowing people to do that without a variance, we should expect that we can be surprised about that.
So we'll bring this up with the fire department and the building. It's a good point. But if a house already has an attached garage, they could come and ask for a variance to turn it into something else.
Well, that doesn't really answer it. You could always ask for a variance.
Right.
And then there'll be a public hearing, and the neighbors will speak, and a suitable decision will be made on the circumstances. But I think now, with this change, homeowners could, without seeking a variance, without going to their neighbors, without coming before the zoning board, simply convert their garage into a bedroom in compliance with the code. And I think that's something to consider. Now, I'm not sure that's negative, but I don't think that's what was intended here. And I would suggest that it is going to happen.
Right.
If you look at surrounding.
Well, logically, a garage has a garage door, right? So if you're going to convert your garage into a bedroom, or you would have to theoretically remove the garage door,
Yes.
and then put up some type of drywall and a door, which I think would result in a permit, right?
Yes.
So therefore, we would have to be notified by law
Yeah.
that you were trying to convert your garage
That's right.
into
You
a
would,
bedroom.
but the homeowner, as a right, would have a right to get that permit, assuming that the plans met the construction code.
And fire code.
And fire code.
And fire code.
And fire code,
Yeah.
of course.
So I think
I'm not sure that that's
it's
negative.
Right.
If the town is looking to increase the density of town and the number of people in the township and in the schools, that may be a good thing. If it's not something the township is looking to do, it might not be a good thing. Let me now turn to impact on the yard itself. And I apologize not having been aware of a changed coverage. So the configuration of the pavement in front of the yard, I think will change. Because right now, you think of something called a driveway. is you drive from the street into a garage, and so the architecture of 98% of the houses in Maplewood that are single family have a driveway that starts at the street, goes to the driveway. As I read the revised ordinance, you don't have to have what you would typically consider a driveway. The two constraints are that you can't cover more than 30% of your front yard, and you can't have paved parking in front of the principal building. And I think that will allow, on not every lot, but many lots, something that doesn't look at all like a driveway. I think it'll allow a bump in where people could pull in and park there, kind of sitting in the front yard. Now, you're right, it won't work for every configuration, because it can't be between that main house and the street, but many lots have enough room that you can figure a parking area that allows two cars parallel to the street that kind of pull in. I think that would not be what you probably intended, and I think in my mind that changes physical characteristics of neighborhoods in ways that I don't know that people have really thought about. You know, I think in some sense it's fine to have a driveway with no garage at the end. And certainly there are plenty of people who don't normally actually park their car in the driveway, including myself, except during the winter. But I think unless the lot coverage addresses this, there's going to be significant changes in how pavement is configured. I think I would read the ordinance to suggest that you can't park on street to satisfy this, but I think there's a significant ambiguity. I think the town would probably win, but I think it's ambiguous. But most importantly, I think it will allow parking in the front yard that is very different than the characteristics of the community today, very different from the characteristics of several of our surrounding neighborhoods, such as South Orange and Milburn, which I believe continue to have garage requirements. I think Union does not have garage requirements, and you could look at the parking configurations, and my personal aesthetic view is it's not attractive. So I would urge the township to think about how to take account of that. Third is the cost and impact on house values. I hope the Township Committee has considered the cost and impact on housing values. You alluded to the fact that you didn't consider that to be part of the purview of the Township Committee, and I'd respectfully submit that that's not how most of our neighbors think about what our governance pressing. I think the Township Committee is quite attentive to values of property and characteristics that are considered physically desirable. Historical preservation, other areas are very attentive. I think it makes sense to get some expert input to the Township Committee, what the reduced cost of building is. Presumably it is less if you don't have to build a garage. And that's fine. You know, there's no reason to force people to build something they're not going to use. Force them to build something they don't want. On the other hand, I think there is an obvious impact on neighborhoods and homes who are adjacent to lots where garages are torn down or the pavement is reconfigured in the front. Classic zoning issue. where everyone wants to be the only house on the street, where you could just pull in right in front, don't have to go in the back, and there you are, and everybody else kind of like doesn't like it. I personally, I think it's going to degrade aesthetics of neighborhoods to allow that, but I'd suggest the township input from people who can speak to that more systematically. Finally, I think I heard you say that the zoning board was getting too many requests for variances. People didn't want to maintain their garages. Obviously, a garage is not as important to maintain as well as the home itself. I agree with that. People shouldn't be required to maintain a garage in excellent shape. On the other hand, the exceptions couldn't change the rule in my mind. There may well be instances where it's appropriate to allow homeowners to tear down their garage, but I think it's a much bigger impact on the community, and the convenience of the zoning board not needing to address this on a one-off basis, I think, is outweighed by, in my mind, a very tangible physical risk of deterioration and physical impact. So I would urge the Township Committee to think about this a little bit more thoroughly, as you suggest, seek public input. There may be ways of ameliorating that, ameliorating the issues of individuals who can't maintain their garages. But in general, it's not proper zoning to say people can't afford to maintain their properties in accordance with the zoning code entirely. I think it would be more appropriate to address on a one-off basis.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Miller.
Anyone else want to address the Township Committee on an agenda item? Come on up.
That the recyclables was part of the agenda item?
It is the marketing of recycles, but you can go ahead. Why don't you introduce yourself and...
Okay, Teddy James of 6 May Terrace in Maplewood. I am concerned about the service that we're getting on the May Terrace block. Almost every week out of a month I have to be calling for my recyclables to be picked up. I think the reason is because it's only about 3 houses on that street. Also, if it's not picked up, it creates a problem where they have some medical buildings right there, the Valerie Fund, and the clients from those buildings usually put other stuff in the garbage if it's sitting out there. Please take it all over the place. I would also like to make sure that the next awarding of the contract for the recyclers is really done on a basis where service is emphasized.
So thank you, Mr. James. Mr. Desiderio, we have resolution authorizing getting bids for recycling, collection, and disposal. And that's what you're talking about.
Yeah.
So how much, when these bids come in, what's the reason for performance that we can either give or not give a contract to the current
We do our due diligence. If we're having specific problems with our collector this time, it would be a factor in whether or not we would award him again. If it were other collectors, then we would go out to those companies, the history that they gave us, and check with the various companies, various towns that they picked up for, and determine what issues, if any, they've had.
And Mr. Manning, do we have a list of people who call DPW and complain? Are we keeping that information?
The DPW keeps that information. Yes, so
Okay.
they collect that and, yes, and
Then
we're
we'll be
aware
able to
of
use
that.
that. We'll be able to use that in evaluating whether
Yes,
to keep the
can
current.
be a factor, absolutely.
So, Mr. James, you and I have spoken before, and I urge you to call DPW, and I know you get frustrated doing that. Why don't you come on back up here?
Mr. Mayor, when I call the DPW, I feel like I am doing something wrong. Because I call so much that probably they get frustrated with me or just get tired of me. I ask if other homeowners have been calling. They say yes.
Okay.
I'm not the only one be calling. I don't know if that try to make me feel better or something, but I call very often.
Okay. I'm sorry you feel that way.
Yes, I do feel like I'm doing something wrong.
The only reason I urge everyone, it's the same thing we say, call the police when there's something, because we do log this information, and when we analyze it, in the police, it's a situation of how to deploy personnel, or in this one, we're looking at whether to renew a contract or not. It's just very helpful to have that information. So we understand that. You were here tonight. You'll be in the record now, which is very good. And Mr. Manning, we will alert Basso not to forget May Terrace, because and I know there's only 3 houses there. It's not right. So we will alert them, and thank you for coming, because now we have it on the record of this
I
problem.
also called Bassett too, Mayor, and
Yeah.
they only have a answering service.
Yeah.
They never get
Yeah.
back to
No,
you.
no,
I call
yeah.
them,
Right.
So it doesn't make no sense. I call them.
Okay.
So, but
All right.
I really do feel frustrated, because I just feel like I'm complaining too much, and
Right.
the secretary really make me feel that way.
Okay. Well, we apologize for that. You pay a lot of taxes. You shouldn't feel frustrated.
Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. James. Thank you, sir.
Anyone else want to address the Township Committee on an agenda item? Okay. We're going to close the public comment period. We're going to move to the Board of Health meeting, and you're all in for something very special, because we have an acting president of our Board of Health here tonight, Mr. McGeehee.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So we'll get started. Pursuant to Section 5, Chapter 231, Public Laws, 1975, this is to state for the record that adequate notice of this meeting has been provided to the public by posting and maintaining the annual notice of regular meetings on the bulletin board of the municipal building, by mailing the annual notice of regular meetings for 2017 to the News Record and Star Ledger in December 2016, and by filing said notice in the office of the Township Clerk.
Ms. Adams? Mayor DeLuca?
Here.
Mr. Lembrick?
Here.
Mr. McGeehee?
Here.
Mrs. Larrier? Whereas Chapter 231, Public Laws 1975, commonly known as the Open Public Meetings Act, requires that all meetings of public bodies be open to the public, and whereas Section 7 provides that the Board of Health has the discretion to permit, prohibit, or regulate the active participation of the public at any meeting, and whereas it's either the Maplewood Board of Health to comply with the provisions of this act, same time to conduct its business in an orderly and expeditious manner, now therefore be resolved by the Maplewood Board of Health, Township of Maplewood does hereby prohibit, except as set forth in the formal agenda, active participation in deliberations of Board of Health by the public, except as otherwise prescribed by law, does limit the public to the observation of the actions and discussion of the Board of Health and all its regular and special meetings.
So moved. Second.
Mayor DeLuca?
Yes.
Mr. Lembrick?
Yes.
Mr. McGeehee?
Yes.
Okay.
All right, I'll now entertain a motion to approve the minutes from the November 8th Board of Health meeting.
President McGeehee, I'd like to make a motion to approve the minutes.
Second.
All right, roll call, Mr. Fritz.
Mayor DeLuca?
Yes.
Mr. Lembrick?
Yes.
Mr. McGeehee?
Yes. All right, now we'll have a report. Mr. Rowe, please.
Good evening. December 16th, our friends at the library and the health and the police and also county legal services were jointly sponsoring a blood drive to be held at the library Saturday, December 16th from 10 to 2, and thank you to the library for hosting that. Another program at the library, which I'm very happy they're hosting, will be in January, and it's about human papillomavirus. And this is a disease for which we now have a vaccine. It's a vaccine that actually prevents cancer from papillomavirus. So anyone who's interested in the topic can attend, and I'm hoping most parents are getting their preteens vaccinated now. Both men and women should be vaccinated. Back in at the beginning of October, we had our Municipal Alliance meeting, and 2 police officers came to the meeting, Sergeant Fields, I believe, and I'm sorry, I don't remember the name of the other officer. And they requested help with funding from the Alliance for open gym at the Columbia High School. I think that's on Friday nights, and also for a mentoring program they were hoping to do at the middle school. The South Orange Alliance coordinator and I and our newly elected chairperson, Candace Davenport, who's works with our alliance, we determined that we could help fund, the alliance rules are very complicated. And we determined that we could help fund the mentoring program at the middle school. And what it is, I understand it now, it's kind of turned into a parent, police officer, and middle school student program where you're meeting as larger groups. And it sounds like a really good idea. And so we're going to be able to help fund some of that. And, that fits easily into our Municipal Alliance programs. The open gym is a little more problematic with the rules that we have.
Understood.
But I just wanted to report that. And finally, I know there are some complaints about noise from trucks unloading in the village. And I spoke with our Essex Regional noise person today and also the state noise person. And we may have a simple fix. It's simply that the businesses put like a barrel outside their store with some mats in it, or rubber mats, or the heavy moving mats that moving companies use. And so if it's a truck where the metal is going to really crash down on the pavement when it's open, they could simply put a mat under it so that it hits the mat. And that should dampen the noise that seems to be the source of the complaint. So I'm going to approach some of the businesses tomorrow to see what they think about it. And that may solve a problem and help people live together a little better. That's my report.
Thank you, Mr. Rowe. Any questions?
I have none.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Rowe.
I have 2 questions for you, actually.
Yes.
Just want to get a follow-up. In the last meeting, we talked about information being distributed regarding the 21 and over new rule in terms of smoking and vapor products. Has that been disseminated out to all the stores in the area?
Yes, it has.
Perfect. Okay, great. And then any update on sanitation over at the Maplewood Theater?
Yes. I spoke with their exterminator, had a long talk with him, and we talked about methods to use. And then I went back and inspected a few weeks later, and they had done, to me, what I thought was a pretty good job. Where there were maybe holes in little corners, they put that foamy stuff. They had lots of baits out. They had lots of those sicky traps. They had the little metal boxes to catch the mice. The only area that I saw that was problematic was at the front of the theaters. They have the black curtains that cover the wall and floor at the front of the theater, and so under there were some spillage of candies and other things you find at movie theaters. So I told them to clean that area better, and then I would be coming back to inspect. But I'll have to say it was probably as good as I've seen it for many years. It's an old building. It takes a lot of cleaning. The snack bar was fine. The storage room, food storage room was fine. And so I think it's just some areas in the viewing theater, and that's something they're just going to constantly have to keep after.
Thank you, Mr. Rowe. I'd like to invite anyone from the public to address the board. Okay. Seeing no one, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
Mr. President, I'd like to make a motion to adjourn the meeting.
Second.
So moved.
Mayor DeLuca,
Yes,
Mr. Lundberg.
Yes.
Mr. McGee.
Yes.
Nice job.
thank you. Next up is Community Development Block Grant hearing. And I'm going to ask Ms. Annette De Palma to come up.
Hi, good evening, members of the Township Committee, public, et cetera. So every year, the Township applies for funding from Essex County through its Community Development Block Grant Program, which is funded by HUD. We've seen over the years that money has become a little bit less available. However, we in Maplewood have a very good relationship with the block grant program, and we are typically funded somewhere between 85 and 100% of what we ask for. So it's a very good and reliable source of funding. We have a number of projects that relate to American with Disabilities Act compliance, and I will very briefly describe them. We will be putting in button-activated door entries that are ADA compliant at the DeHart Community Center. There's one on the exterior door. We don't have one on the interior door. We don't have one at the courthouse at the end of the ramp. We'll also be putting one at the DPW building, and the DPW will also be including a concrete ramp, so there's access to the front door. Additionally, in Orchard Park, there's a structure, a building in Orchard Park that is used for a number of things, especially when there are events at the park. There are restrooms there. We need to replace 2 doors in order to, because you need a specific kind of door frame to have that button activated, so we'll be doing that there. Additionally, at the Donnell Road crosswalk, which intersects with the South Pedestrian Tunnel of the New Jersey Transit Station, we will be installing a solar-mounted push-button pedestrian crossing sign with flashing LEDs. We'll also provide additional curb bump outs and put a speed bump right before the crosswalk. There's a tendency for traffic to go through that street a little bit more quickly than it should, and that's a very effective traffic calming device. At Borden Park, where it intersects with Ball Terrace, the main entrance to the park is on Borden Parkway. We will be, and again, when I say we will be, we're asking for funding from the county to make these improvements. Making an ADA compliant curb bump out and crosswalk, and installing 2 additional crosswalks, again with LED flashing pedestrian arrow signs. And there'll be posts along both sides of those signs on Boynton Avenue. And additionally, at the Hilton Library, there is ADA access from the parking lot. So if you get to the Hilton Branch Library from the parking lot, you're fine. The building's accessible. However, there is no access from the sidewalk. So from the sidewalk at Tuscan Road, we'll be doing installing a ramp with a switchback, and again, it will be obviously ADA compliant, and we'll end at the terminus, which is the concrete landing pad in front of the library. The total cost of these proposed improvements is $205,000, and we expect that, absent some dreaded diminishment in funding, we'll get very close, if not all, of this money we're asking for. Any questions?
Any questions from the Township Committee?
No question for me.
Okay, is anyone from the public want to comment on the proposals that we're contemplating submitting to Essex County Department of Community Development? No one? Okay.
Okay.
So we're going to close the public hearing
We're going
and
to close the public hearing, but I will ask that this is the first of 2 public hearings. The second one will be at the next Township Committee meeting on December 19th. And the application also requires that attendees at the public hearing, which you all have been, write their names and addresses. So I'm going to be passing around this.
This doesn't make you do anything other than to say that you're here. It's helpful to have it here, so thank you. It's always nice to see a lot of people at these meetings when we have hearings, so.
Yeah, it's fine.
So thank you.
Well timed.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Hall.
Mr. Mayor, do we make a motion tonight to approve this?
Next meeting.
Next meeting, and then we're able to make the motion and approve it?
Yep.
Okay, in one meeting, okay.
Yep.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I should have also.
Microphone.
There will be a resolution for passage on the next agenda, which authorizes the township agent designees to apply for this funding.
And then we'll consider that after the next public hearing.
Right.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, we're on item number 8. We have an ordinance on final passage.
Mr. Mayor, ordinance on final passage, ordinance number 2877-17, an ordinance to amend Chapter 257 of the Code of the Township of Maplewood entitled Vehicles and Traffic. This ordinance will revise the penalty for overnight parking in the Township of Maplewood to $60.
This ordinance has been published, copies posted on the bulletin board in the municipal building, and copies made available to the general public in accordance with the law. Is there anyone who would like to speak on this ordinance which changes the overnight parking fee? Anyone get a ticket lately? Okay, so you will, this is for the future. Seeing no one, will close the public hearing, and can we get a motion, Mr. McGehee?
Sure. Mr. Mayor, I move this ordinance be adopted as a whole and the clerk be directed to publish the same as a passed ordinance in the Maplewood South Orange News Record according to law.
Second. Any discussion?
Mr. Mayor, I do have a question. So this came out of the Code Committee?
No.
This came from Mr. Bancroft.
Oh, okay.
Basically, it happened as I reported that the assignment judge had in fact approved this increase, and the code is just catching up with what has been the practice, quite frankly.
Understood. So is this increase consistent then, or is this price consistent with other communities? Is that basically, so
Yes.
Yes.
okay, so it's not, there's been a rash of overnight parking?
No, when Mr. Bancroft was here during the budget, we talked about the fees and make them consistent with other towns. And we started that process then in the spring, and it took until now to get approval by the judges and what have you. So that's why we're doing it now.
Wheels of justice turn slowly.
And they're turning. Anything else?
Just briefly, I just want to make sure that once, assuming this is going to pass, that we enforce it and we are inclusive of even off-duty law officers from different towns. It's been brought to my attention that some park overnight illegally, so I just want to make that a public record.
Please call the roll.
Mr. Lembrecht,
Yes.
Mr. McGehee,
Yes.
Mayor Zaluka.
Yes. Okay. Oh, motion is approved. Thank you. We have 7 discussion items. The first is going to be Library for the Future. And I'm going to ask Mr. Daffis to join us at the table here. And again, if anyone would like to speak on this item, this will be the time for you to come up and speak about the library and the Library for the Future.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Lauren Nile, 590 Ridgewood Road, and I'm president of the Friends of the Maplewood Library. First off, I would like to thank the Township Committee for all of its support in support of the Library Bond Construction Act, especially those of you who came to the railroad station help us get support from the commuters. I really appreciate it, such an early time of day. And I'm very grateful that it passed. That was a real relief. The Friends are very, very excited and enthusiastic about this project and about building this library for the future for the citizens of Maplewood. Over the last few years, Friends have put aside funds raised through our book sales and special gifts to the Friends for this purpose, to help with the construction. and we're very happy to continue doing that. We do the best we can to raise as much as we can for that and for supporting the library. Tonight, I hope the Township Committee will join us by voicing their wholehearted approval for this, moving forward on this project, which is a once-in-a-generation opportunity for all of us to improve the Township of Maplewood. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else want to address the Township Committee?
Good evening, Mayor, members of the Township Committee. I'm Ben Cohen, 36 Headley Place, Maplewood. I'm the president of the Maplewood Memorial Library Foundation. 2 years ago, I first spoke to you about our dream and our plan to renovate and expand our library, which had been built in the 1950s, expanded in 1960. Mayor, with your help in your dual roles as mayor and as a member of the library board, you don't get paid for that, do you? Okay. And with the help of that board, Friends of the Library Foundation, the library director, Sarah Lester, and her staff, we have made great strides over those 2 years. The Library Foundation has, through its consultant, Semple Bixel Associates, commenced a feasibility study to help us assess the amount of funds that we will likely be able to raise privately. While we are only in the early stages of that study, the initial results are very encouraging. Second, a building committee was formed, as you know. That building committee vetted and then selected a top architectural firm, Sage & Kuhn, who, with input from the library director and staff, from many interest groups in town, from many individual residents at public meetings, and from many work sessions with the building committee, has presented us with a proposal for a 21st century library for Maplewood. This was truly a collaborative effort, and the result, if I may say so, is nothing less than spectacular. Some may ask, why do we need to renovate and expand our library? And why do we need to do it now? The answers to those questions are as follows. The two buildings that comprise our one library system were built, as I said, 60 years ago in the 50s. The main branch was expanded 50 years ago. Yes, we do acknowledge that Hilton branch has very recently received new windows and been painted. And by the way, Hilton branch is and will remain an integral part of our library system. Our more than half a century old library buildings do not have sufficient number of meeting rooms. They lack sufficient areas for collaborative work. They lack a sufficient number of quiet spaces. They suffer from water table concerns. They have antiquated and insufficient heating and lighting systems. The main branch lacks good access from the village, from the park, and from Baker Street. And there's a critical need for an enhanced community meeting space with its own separate outside entrance and its own bathrooms, which would allow that space to be open when the rest of the library is closed for a variety of different potential uses. We also need to open the main branch to the beautiful Olmsted-built park through the use of glass and through access to that park. The proposed new library that's been designed for us will give us all of those things and much more. Time doesn't permit me to name all the things, but in addition to everything that I've said, there's proposed cafe, historic preservation room, outdoor patios, etc. The people of Maplewood love and utilize their library system. The following facts make that clear. 1,000 patrons enter our two library buildings each and every day. 180 computer sessions are used each and every day. 165 wireless sessions are used each and every day. Of our 24,000 residents in Maplewood, an astonishing 20,000 have library cards. That's far above the national average. Yet, 15% of our friends and neighbors in town do not have access, internet access in their homes. Why do we need to do this now? For many reasons. One of the most important ones, though, is this. Because this fall, the New Jersey legislature and the governor enacted into law, and then the voters approved in a statewide referendum the New Jersey Library Construction Bond Act. This act allocates $125 million of statewide funding for library construction through a dollar-for-dollar match of local funding for shovel-ready projects. This means that the state may fund up to half the cost of our project. We must act now to take advantage of these state funds. We simply cannot pass up the opportunity to avail ourselves of potentially up to $10 to $12 million in state funding. This is a once-in-a-generation opportunity. I think the last time the state did this was 17 years ago, and it was on a much smaller scale. Put it another way, we now have an opportunity to get a spectacular 21st century library that costs approximately $18.5 million in construction, or a total of $22.5 million with interest for bonding, at a cost to the taxpayers of Maplewood of only $10 million. We're looking at a $22.5 million library project that would cost the taxpayers of Maplewood only $10 million. That's like Black Friday on steroids. Now, also, we have our architectural plans in place. We have a dynamic library director ready and able to lead our library into the 21st century. And now we simply have outgrown our 20th century library. I'm not going to bore you with all the statistics about how many more books we have and how many more everythings we have, how many more people we have, but it's a lot. Mayor and members of the Township Committee, you have an opportunity here to do something historic for every resident of our community. A renovated and expanded library is an investment in the future of Maplewood, which will last for generations of our children and grandchildren. Maplewood needs this. Maplewood deserves this. As I've urged you previously, and I see you stole my line in your write-up, Mayor, do it once, do it right, do it now. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Scott.
Thank you. Anyone else?
That's a pretty hard act to follow. I'm Kate McCaffrey. I'm president of the Maplewood Library Board of Trustees. Like Laura Nile, I want to thank the Township Committee for your support, your early morning support for the bond initiative, and we really are thrilled that that passed. We think that that's a game-changing situation. And I also would like to say that for the past 7 years, I think it's 7 years, maybe 8, that I've been involved on the library board, I've been really thrilled to see the way that the institution has blossomed. First, by creating a foundation that would support, give the library the vital support that it needs. Second, in hiring Sarah Lester, who has brought a great deal of charisma and dynamic leadership to the library, and encouraged us to think about what our library could be. And I think during Hurricane Sandy, we saw what a magnet the library was to our community, the way that it really is the heart of our community. So I'm here just to emphasize the passion and the support that the Board of Trustees feels towards this project. We're fully committed. We are excited by the structures that we have in place to facilitate the project. We're thrilled with the architects that we were able to attract. And we look forward to a library that is a real expression of this community. And the library sits at the gateway of our beautiful downtown that has been voted the best downtown in New Jersey. So it seems only fitting that we should have a library that is of equal caliber. So I want to encourage you to fully support our library. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else want to address the Township Committee on the library issue? Okay, thank you very much. So we'll get into our discussion. We've invited Mr. Daffis to join us. He's the Township Committeeman-elect, and he'll have the opportunity to make the tough decisions next year when we have to make the decision. Tonight, we're clearly not going to be making a bonding decision, but we wanted to, what we said is we were teeing up tonight for us to revisit the issue. We wanted to see what was going to happen with the bond. The bond passed locally and statewide overwhelmingly. And we've worked on some numbers, which we've provided. We know the cost of the project before interest on the bonds is just under $19 million. That includes the direct construction, to furniture, to insurance, to LEED certification. We've been looking at that, and we know that the state bond is a one-for-one match. It's still unclear as to whether or not there'll be any cap on that grant size, whether they'll match all the money that we're looking for. But we're optimistic, and actually this morning I was with Governor Cody, and we were talking, and I said, you know, our highest priorities is the library bond. And he said, well, what number are you looking at? And I said, $10 million. And so we put that out there. So a lot of this will really depend on what the state is prepared to give us by right. You know, we're raising the money, they're going to match it. But we will have to bond for our responsibility, and the Library Foundation is also going to be raising money. So we've run two scenarios, one bonding $10 million over 20 years, $15 million over 20 years. As you might imagine, the interest is quite staggering for both of those, but it's the mortgage. We're mortgaging. You buy your house for one number, but when you finish paying it off, it's mortgage because you're paying the interest plus the principal. We thought 20 years was the appropriate amount of time. That allows for the current generation of folks in Maplewood and future generations all to contribute to making this library for the 21st century, and as was mentioned, just a spectacular library. So we run some numbers and did some optimistic revenue projections, pessimistic projections. If we could get the $10 million from the state and the township or taxpayers, then we think, you know, we can make this work with the library foundation coming in. If we have to go less with the state, it's going to be a harder decision for us. We're going to have to really see as we go along what is our appetite. But we're working on optimistic. Just to give you the payback on an optimistic, we're talking about 19 cents per $1,000 of assessed value of a house. So you would take your house, we'll give you the average house here in Maplewood is assessed just under $500,000. So if we were to get our optimistic revenue projections, the annual payment for an average house would be $94 annually, and over the 20 years would be just under $1,900. Our pessimistic payoff would be 26 cents per $1,000 in assessed value. Again, going back to the average house, that would be $129 annually and $2,600 over 20 years. We're looking at this as an investment. We're calling it the Library Improvement Fund. This is, we think, one of the things that those of us who are the leaders of the community need to look at as to what impact we're making in the community by having a first-class library, what impact we're making for the people that use it, our property values, the appeal to the community, all that has to be looked at, and we think that this is a good deal. As we look at all the homeowners, there's roughly just under 7,000 homeowners in Maplewood. About 74% of them will pay under $150 a year into the library improvement fund. So we think this is a good deal. And I'm speaking, when I say we, I'm speaking from the building committee. I should say that the finance committee looked at this last week. We've run the numbers. There's more to do, but we really have to focus on what we can get from the state and also be very supportive of the Library Foundation. You didn't mention the big fundraiser that's happening this Saturday. It's sold out already, but we expect this fundraiser to help with the funds and also to do more. So tonight was really to take the temperature of the Township Committee to just recommit ourselves to moving forward and seeing what you're all thinking about.
I have a question, Mr. Mayor.
Sure.
So in the optimistic projection, we have $3 million from the Library Foundation. The pessimistic, we have $2 million. Is that under the assumption that the Library Foundation through fundraising is going to raise $2 to $3 million? Is there already something in the pot that we're building off of? Just wondering the basis for those numbers.
They would raise that money. There's nothing in the pot. There's a little bit in the pot, but not anything near what this is. The Library Foundation has hired a consultant to work with them. They've identified some people to go start talking to. We've also received some private commitments from organizations and individuals which haven't been made public yet, and they're still being solidified. So we think we're going to be able to launch this fundraising with a very good base.
Okay.
But this is going to be new money.
Okay, so, if we don't hit, so if we go below 2 million or above 3 million, it could sort of make things more pessimistic or more optimistic.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
All right. That seems like, so it seems like the two big variables here are how much we get from the state and how much we get from people privately. Right, correct. Okay.
And institutions, both individuals and institutions, companies, foundations. So yeah.
Okay, thank you.
So for me, I'm optimistic that we will, see the private funding, and hopefully the state will match dollar for dollar up to the 10 million. But I did prepare some words, and I will put them in public record. Paraphrasing Thomas Jefferson from a letter from 1809, I have often thought that nothing would do more extensive good at small expense than the establishment of a small circulating library in every county. An investment is good, an investment in the future. This is not the first time that we've made such a decision. We took the action of public bond financing to build the Hilton Library, which was originally on the second floor of the Boynton Avenue Fire Station years ago. At that time, it was an investment in the future. As outlined tonight, the torch has been passed, and financing is needed for our town to move forward with investing in its future again, for generations to come. Based on the numbers, the pessimistic numbers, our family investment, my family's investment, in the future Maplewood is $144 a year, an overall investment of $2,886. Pessimistically, that's $12 a month. $12 a month in the future of our community. Public libraries are dynamic and versatile community centers. They are also community lifelines. They are the sources for more than half of young adults and seniors living in the United States to access the internet and to learn. In October, we learned at a presentation at Columbia High School that 15% of our own residents don't have access to the internet. Libraries support three core missions: reading, education, promoting reading and education, offering access to information, and anchoring our communities. Our library was a beacon during Hurricane Sandy. Our library is a top meeting space in our community. There are dozens of meetings a week, debates, festivals, children events, and just natural family time. Our library is not just a place of contact for our community, it is a place of pride for our community. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Mr. Daffis.
Hold it down.
You have to hold it while you speak. Okay. Nice little trick. Got it. I strongly think that we need to go forward with this project. And I'm going to be very proud to be part of this next year. The library is a very special place for me. Some of you already know that it is where I huddled along with my immigrant mom as a very young boy in very modest blue-collar Philadelphia. It's where I learned how to read English and speak English. Our library in Maplewood is not just a learning center, it is a technology center. It has become a business center for our small businesses and sole proprietors in town. It is a community space. If you go to our library at 3 o'clock on any afternoon, you will see an intergenerational cross-section of our community. It is a meeting space for nonprofits. It is so many things. It is even connected to our schools. Some people suggest, well, why should we do this and forget about our schools? We're not going to forget about our schools. But the library is connected to our schools, especially for our middle school students who go there for programming and after-school events. This is a one-in-a-lifetime opportunity to do the right thing for our community currently, since our library can no longer serve our community needs currently. And it is a one-time opportunity to do the right thing for future generations. The investment that we're going to make, the return on the investment that we're going to make is truly priceless because it's a return on our community's heritage. And I think that says it all. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So, Rebecca, you want to say anything more?
The only thing I would say is that I think we just need to keep up whatever pressure we can, whatever lobbying we can, to make sure that the 5 to 10 million, or hopefully closer to 10 in state money, comes through. Obviously, you know, as was said before, that's a game changer for this project. And so long as we land somewhere in the range between the pessimistic and the optimistic, or at least close to the pessimistic, I can't see any reason why I wouldn't support this.
So I think it is fair to say the intention of the Township Committee is move ahead. And we are going to do all those things. We're going to continue to work with the foundation to raise the money. We're going to continue to work with our legislators and the Murphy administration to make sure we're on the top of the list. And we're going to do something really special here with that library. And this is going to be good. This is going to be good. And we're all going to be very proud for our investment and our vision in putting this forward. We're going to take some hits, but that's part of it. So I think the intention is to move forward. Okay? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, we're on item number 2. This is going to be quick. This is a report from our Finance Committee. The Finance Committee interviewed 3 firms for insurance broker risk manager, and we are recommending that the Balkan Risk Management firm, which is the Township's current firm, be retained. We were impressed by their knowledge of the community, their proactivity. They brought up issues around sexual harassment and the training that they've already done, which is becoming very important, and the stability while the administrator's transition is going on. So we're recommending in January that we award a contract to Balkan. Okay, so we'll put that on for January 2nd. Okay, thank you. I thought we might see an emergency note for the $402,000, and that's not going to happen? Okay. And then just to alert you all, at the end of November, we are at 93% of anticipated revenue, and we expect to be over 100% by year end, and we're only at 90% of budgeted expenses come in at budget or below, so we're very happy about that. The December 1st court hearing, Mr. Desiderio and I attended the court hearing for our affordable housing settlement, and we did very well. We had great representation from the Ceridian firm. Our Megan York, our planner, was excellent up on the stand. She really did a great job, and the court master could not say more good things about Maplewood and our history of providing affordable housing, doing affordable housing rehabilitation work over the years. And we are the first municipality in Essex County to reach a settlement agreement on our affordable housing. So what this means is that we'll have a record. I believe the court record was, or the proposed draft was sent to us today. And we'll have a 6-unit obligation to do rehabs going forward. We'll have to change our affordable housing requirements from 10% to 15%, which is what we've been telling developers that going forward. We will be honoring our commitment to providing units for families by making 3-bedroom units and making sure that we're addressing low income, not just moderate income families. And we're going to be doing some zoning changes. We're going to be able to count the affordable assisted living facility as part of our commitment. So I think all in all, we did a very good job. And Mr. Desiderio, over the next couple of months, we're going to have to get busy with adopting ordinances.
Well, we'll have assuming the court enters this order within the next week or so, we'll have 120 days within which to draft certain orders, certain ordinances. The redevelopment plans will have to be adjusted also. The judge gave us a date in May, although it's not reflected in that order for hearing. So the next thing will be, once we do compliance, then we'll go back into court and the judge will enter the final order, which will grant us immunity through 2025, I believe it is. Yes. Correct, Mayor? Okay. Mm-hmm. So all in all, I think it's a good outcome. I think it would have been a very expensive litigation, which we don't know. And it's in keeping with, has been the philosophy of not only this governing body, but other governing bodies in the past, of a commitment to affordable housing within our community. So I think it was a good, fair settlement. And as the mayor said, I think the special master, we joked about getting the transcript just so we could show it to everybody. So we may do that. So,
yep. And then actually, even the fair share housing, the attorney there talked about Maplewood's commitment to doing this right. I have to say, when I first came on with the Township Committee in 1998, Mr. Desiderio handed me a box that Mr. Ryan had and said, we have this affordable housing thing we have to deal with. And we put it together, hired the firm, Community Grants and Planning, to work with us. And we've done great things over the last 20 years or so. Provided affordable housing. We've done over 50 units of rehab, 28,000, that's $1 million in rehab in people's property. Because it's not just about bringing people into the community who need affordable housing, but it's helping people who are in the community already that needed affordable, stay here that met that affordable housing guideline. So we fixed up people's homes and they were able to stay there and afford that. And we've built housing. We've built units of affordable housing. We've been very clear with our development that they have to build it, and they've contributed. And we have some money to even do some experimental. I think the Affordable Housing Board would like to look at some foreclosures to see if we can put them on the rolls. There's programs that move foreclosures into market units. And so working with nonprofit housing developers, I think there's some opportunity to do some really exciting things going forward.
excellent.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, number 4 is we have a family in town that would like to bring in a mother and daughter. They're participating in the UN refugee program, and we have our ordinance says you can only have one person as a boarder. And what we'd like to, what I'm suggesting here is that we have a moratorium through July 31st on building department action when a Maplewood homeowner houses a refugee family that's participating in the UN Refugee Agency program, provided that the homeowner notifies the building department of his or her intention, and that the home and housing meets fire safety regulations. Essentially, we would allow this, and that gives us some time to sort through, because we might have other families that want to house refugees, and I think we should, as a welcoming and inclusive community, I think this fits right exactly what we're about.
I agree.
Mr. Mayor, I support this 100%. My question is, do we need a resolution for this? Do we need to amend an ordinance? What's the immediate action, Mr. Desiderio?
I think the resolution is the appropriate way to go, which will basically voice it. It's kind of what we've done on pilot programs. So we'll do a resolution basically, what we really should do, it's actually an interesting point. I think we should do a resolution, which I would memorialize, but I think we should do it again in January when the new governing body comes on, okay? So that there's no issue with regard to it. And that will just suspend the implementation of the ordinance through July 31st, 2018. If in the meantime there's some issue of wanting to do something with the ordinance, we can certainly do that.
Okay, and can we pass that resolution tonight and you can memorialize it?
Yes, sir.
Okay, then I'd like to move that we pass such a resolution.
So second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Please call the roll. Shouldn't be long, the roll.
Mr. Lambert?
Yes.
Mr. McGee?
Yes.
Mayor DeLuca?
Yes, that was quick. Okay, so, and then if you can put it on for January 2nd also, same resolution. Not for discussion, just the resolution, yeah.
Yeah.
Put it on, the same resolution, whatever you memorialize, we'll just put it on again. Great, thank you. My last item is just to update you all on the executive search firm RFP. We drafted it. I want to thank Mr. Daffis for giving me some of his comments, which we've incorporated into the RFP. We issued it December 1st. We had hoped to get a quicker turnaround, but there was a requirement that there had to be 20 days for notice. So we're going to get back the RFPs on the 20th of December. And we will then, we'll immediately look at them. And if we can put together a special meeting before the end of the year, we'll do that. I've floated 22nd. Not sure we'll be able to do that, but we can talk about it more.
I can do the 22nd.
Yeah.
So the idea is to try to get this person on board before the end of the year so that we can get it moving. So, and we've gotten some inquiries from firms, so I'm sure, and we've gotten some inquiries from people. So,
Absolutely.
okay, so December 20th is when we'll see the firms. And by the way, if anyone approaches us, I think our position should be that we're waiting to hire a firm, and when that firm is secured, we will send that or alert that person to contact that firm and go through that process.
Or you might, yeah, that would be the best way. But you might forget somebody, or, you know, I hate to leave them out there, but we are going to have a firm, and it's going to be advertised,
Right.
at least in the New Jersey League of Municipalities, and probably on our own website. So if they
position,
look in there, the
yes,
position,
yeah.
yes, so they should keep looking there.
Right, okay. The inspector process, proper procedure regarding entering a homeowner's premise.
Yes.
Mr. McGee.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is just a brief conversation. There was a incident that occurred in the last week or so with a resident, and there was some gray area in terms of the inspector coming into the property to address a situation where people were painting. You know, there's more information regarding this in terms of what happened, who called, and so forth. But I just wanted to get a little clarification. I appreciate Mr. Desiderio providing some information, and if you could just publicly state for the record what you provided to me, I think it'd be very helpful for the public to understand, essentially, you know, what the process is, you know, and what is right and wrong in terms of when we have inspections. So I will give you a second to find that document.
Essentially, under the Fourth Amendment of the United States Constitution and Clause 7 of Article 1 of the New Jersey Constitution, search and seizure is not permitted without warrant or probable cause. So what I did was, when I got Mr. McGee's request, I did a short memo to him. A township inspector in the normal course of his or her duties may request entry into a property. The property owner may deny entry. If the inspector believes there is an imminent danger to health and safety, as an example, the building may blow up, they may request police assistance and demand entry. Entry must be allowed or forced entry may be used. This must be used only in the most extreme situation and only if the inspector has independent verified proof of the imminent danger. Fire is coming out of the windows or a resident of the property has provided proof of extreme danger. Subsequent to entry, a detailed report must be completed to justify the entry. The other alternative is to secure a warrant to require inspection. In this instance, the inspection would need to support the warrant application with an affidavit reciting facts which would allow the judge to issue the warrant. An example, the health officer has reason to believe that a resident has a contagious disease. The process could be expedited, but again, the circumstances would need to be exigent. After the inspection, a detailed report should be provided to the court to justify the warrant. The entry into one's property without permission is very serious. It needs to be based upon the inspector's experience and not solely on a neighbor's dissatisfaction with the condition of some third party's property. The inspector has the authority to condemn the property as unsafe or unhealthy, in which case the police can direct that no one occupy the property. Given the experience of our inspectors and my working with them over the years, I am comfortable they recognize their responsibility in the law. In fact, I have worked with them in many exigent situations. I'm always available to them. So that was the memo that I generated to Mr. McGee in response.
I have a question about that. Suppose the inspector has been trying to find the owner of a house and has been there a couple times and no one's been there. Comes upon it again and sees somebody in there, knocks on the door. There are workers in there, painters. He says, "Oh, I want to come in and take a look," and the painters let them in. Is that permitted?
The answer is, if he is granted entry by who's ever in control of the property, I would say yes. I mean, generally speaking, it should be somebody who's in control. You know, the example is, we're in the criminal situation where we have the individual who is a roommate or someone and lets them in, and then they do a search. But again, if there's a knock on the door and someone who is supposedly in charge of that property allows them in, I don't see any reason why they wouldn't be allowed in.
The roommate presumably would be paying rent, so they would have a.
Well, I understand that, but now we're getting into the real issue. So I mean,
so I guess so maybe legally it isn't a problem, but should it be a practice? Should we?
Assuming that our inspectors are trying to do what's right for the town, I would think the policy would be, as long as they reasonably believe. Now, could they ask, "Do you have the authority to let me in?" That's a fair question. Okay, that's maybe the best way to deal with it. And if the answer is no, I'm just a painter, then they shouldn't get access.
Okay, I think that we might just want to do just to reinforce that training with our inspectors on something like that. Just to ask that additional question.
Yeah, I agree with that. That way we kind of narrow that gray area to defined definition. Thank you. That's perfect. Thank you, Mr. Davis.
Thank you for your wise opinion. Were you auditioning?
Pardon me?
Were you auditioning?
For Mr. Manning's job?
Yeah, well, or maybe higher, you don't know. You got a new governor. Mr. Manning, we have your item number 7, department head and other appointments.
Yes, so I provided the Township Committee, as I do every year at around this time, a recommendation in terms of appointments for department heads and all of those employees who do not have tenure. Basically, I go over the list. I've been doing personnel evaluations for most of them. I have to still finish them up, but I gave you what I felt was reasonable based on the behavior and the work ethic through the previous year.
So, anyone have any questions? Do we have to reappoint Acting Chief Duval on January 1st as acting chief? Or, no, we did that until further notice, correct?
I don't
So
think
that's
so,
good.
no.
Okay. Right. Okay. Can we get a motion on the consent agenda?
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to move adoption of the consent agenda.
Second.
Mr. Lambrecht,
Yes.
Mr. McGee,
Yes.
Mayor DeLuca.
Yes, thank you. Now we're at public comment on any subject matter. Thank you for waiting. You want to go get him? Okay.
Good evening. My name is John Gordon, resident Maplewood 34 Gerard Place. I'm going to read a letter that we put together as a collection of residents. But we, the undersigned Soma residents, are writing to express our adamant opposition to the resolution submitted on November 21st to the Maplewood Township Committee condemning the Palestinian boycott, divestment, and sanctions movement against Israel, commonly known as BDS, by 3 non-Maplewood residents. This resolution is part of a campaign to effectively deny American BDS supporters their constitutionally protected right to boycott. At the federal, state, local level, a coordinated anti-BDS campaign is seeking to prevent Americans from employing their protected right to engage in political speech and action, including criticizing and boycotting foreign governments. The resolution, which condemns the nonviolent Palestinian-led movement for freedom, justice, and equality for the Palestinian people, also attempts to obscure the crimes and abuses perpetrated by Israel and to mischaracterize and suppress the Palestinian struggle for justice. Modeled on the principled movement that brought down apartheid South Africa, the Palestinian BDS movement is a rapidly growing international movement made up of unions, academic associations, churches, and grassroots movements across the world. The BDS movement has garnered the respect and support of Black Lives Matter, as well as the United Nations, Amnesty International, and the ACLU, and many other people of conscience. In its commitment to freedom, justice, and equality for all, the BDS movement is part of the shared struggle of people of color against racial and economic injustice. The Palestinian BDS call urges nonviolent pressure of Israel until it complies with international law by meeting 3 demands. 1, ending its occupation and colonialization of all Palestinian land. 2, providing full equality for Palestinian citizens of Israel. And 3, respecting and protecting and promoting the rights of Palestinian refugees to return to their homes and properties. Instead of attempting to refute these demands on principled grounds, the presenters of the resolution attacked BDS as being anti-Semitic. But there is nothing in the BDS call for freedom, justice, and equality that is anti-Semitic. In founder Omar Barghouti's own words, BDS, quote, consistently and categorically rejects all forms of discrimination and racism, including anti-Semitism. Growing Jewish support for BDS is evidence of that. The presenters also attempted to suggest that Israel is a beacon of democracy. In fact, Israel is a settler, colonial, and apartheid regime. Beginning at its founding in 1948, Israel ethnically cleansed 750,000 indigenous Palestinians who have never been allowed to return to their homes, although the right of return is guaranteed under international law. This tragic event has devastated the lives of millions of Palestinians, including the Palestinian signatories of this letter. Israel maintains an ongoing violent military occupation of the West Bank and subjects Gaza to repeated brutal bombing campaigns and a barbaric blockade. Meanwhile, Israel's settlements continue to swell, while Palestinians living in Israel are subject to racist laws and segregation policies. Citizens in Israel. A state that gives different rights to different people based purely on their religious identity cannot be described as a democracy. Finally, the resolution presenters asserted that BDS threatens peace, because it promotes a hateful agenda. BDS actually offers the best chance for peace because it is based on an agenda of freedom, equality, and justice derived from international law. At a time when the right to dissent and protest in this country is increasingly under attack, we call on the Maplewood Township Committee to categorically reject the campaign attempting to smear BDS, deny its supporters their constitutional protections, and provide cover for settler colonialism and apartheid. At a minimum, the Township Committee should make sure a full and open discussion of the resolution and its issues it raised takes place, one that includes voices of Palestinian Soma residents. As supporters of equal rights for all, we enthusiastically welcome that debate.
Thank you, Mr. Gordon.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Anyone else?
Is this on the same issue? Can I just say something first? I think I speak for the Township Committee. We've decided not to consider this resolution.
Thank you.
And I just want to say that, you know, I condemn anti-Semitism. I'm sure everyone on the Township Committee condemns anti-Semitism. I support the peace process in the Middle East. I think that the president continues to take steps, including the step he took today with respect to the embassy decision, that are dangerous for the peace process. And I think that if the people of this community are going to get together in a consensus, it should be to support the peace process and not to fight among ourselves. BDS and Israel is obviously, it's a very complex issue, and I don't think it's one that we can appropriately litigate here as a Township Committee one way or the other. So that at least is my reason why I don't think we can consider this, and I think that it's been a consensus that we're not going to consider this. But thank you for presenting your thoughts.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you. We have other people that want to speak on this issue.
David.
Good evening, committee members. My name is David Letwin. I'm a resident of South Orange, and thank you for sharing your thinking, letting us know where this is headed. But nevertheless, still in all, I wanted to just make a couple of brief comments tonight because this was a publicly raised issue. There was as you all know, there's a video of the presentation that the people made on the 21st. They raised a lot of issues that I think despite the fact that you are not going to address it, I think since they went on the public record, we have the right and the obligation to respond and leave a public record of our thoughts. And I just wanted to very briefly say that not only am I a Soma resident, I'm also a Jewish Soma resident. And when I watched the video of the presentation that was made around the 21st, I was very distressed by the idea that people who do not live in Soma, who were clearly themselves Jewish and representing pro-Israeli organizations, seem to me, and I'm speaking now for myself, although I'm a proud signatory to this statement, which I'll hand out to you guys at the end, I'm not speaking on behalf of the statement or the signers right now, I'm speaking on behalf of myself. I was disturbed that people would come here, which struck me with the kind of presumptuous arrogance and confidence that they spoke for all Jews in mischaracterizing BDS as anti-Semitic and in mischaracterizing Israel as a democracy, and that they seem to project the idea, this is just my response, that they would come here and that you would all just go, oh, well, I guess they're Jewish, they come from Jewish organizations, they claim it's anti-Semitism, I guess that just ends that discussion. And we're glad to see, obviously, you do not respond that way. But I wanted to just go on the record as a Jewish person, saying that to me, my family is very intimately connected with the history of violent anti-Semitism. They come from Eastern Europe and have a long history of involvement in human rights causes, going back to labor issues, the civil rights movement, the anti-Vietnam War movement, the environment, same-sex marriage. Wherever there's been an issue of people calling out for justice, my family has been involved. And to me, support for Palestinian rights, support for BDS, and rejecting the narrative that they proposed of this democracy in the Middle East, when in fact it is an apartheid regime, I found very offensive as a Jewish person. And I just wanted you to know, you to understand, that when people who are Zionists, which is a political ideology, not a religion or an ethnic identity, It's a political ideology. When they come here speaking, they represent themselves and other people who think as they do. They do not speak for all Jewish people. And I just wanted to come to get that on the record so that you could hear that as well. And let me just pass out the
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. And, I mean, Mr. Lewin, just to sort of maybe give a little bit more general response, and this is, you know, as you just said, I am also speaking only for myself and not for my colleagues, but, you know, we do take positions on issues in the form of resolutions on a not infrequent basis. But for me, the criteria when I'm deciding that, whether it's a very local issue or a national issue, is, do I feel confident that we are expressing the consensus sentiment of the community, A, and B, do I think this issue has an impact, a direct impact on the community? And I feel that in this case, the reason why I personally don't think we should consider this is I don't think there's a clear consensus in this community on this issue one way or the other. We have heard, Township Committee members have heard emails, social media, face-to-face. I certainly know I have from people on both sides of this issue. I don't need a show of hands to tell me that there's division on this issue. And I also, as I said before, don't think that this issue has enough of a direct effect on Maplewood versus its impact elsewhere to be something that's appropriate for us to make a decision one way or the other. Are we going to support BDS? Are we going to be anti-BDS? I don't think that's our role one way or the other. So I thank the people who came the last time to support the resolution, oppose the resolution. I thank you and Mr. Gordon tonight for speaking against it. I don't plan to put this item on the agenda. I don't plan to vote on it. And that's just me, but I think at least in terms of not putting it on the agenda, my colleagues are in agreement on that.
Yes, and if I can just say that certainly makes sense if particularly if there's not going to be a full and open discussion in which both sides get fully aired, which does not seem to have happened in any of these other townships in Essex County where this similar resolution was passed.
When we're putting a resolution like this, and Mayor DeLuca, feel free to correct me or Mr. McGeehee, but when there's a resolution like this where we think there may be some division or some dispute as to whether we'd be representing the consensus of the community, that's put on the agenda, it's publicly noticed, people are given an opportunity to come, and sometimes we even put it off if we feel like there's, we're not ready yet. But this is one where I think there was consensus among the Township Committee that this is just not going to be an appropriate issue for us to vote on one way or the other.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else want to address the Township Committee on this, or on any issue rather? Yeah, could you hold on one second? I just want to, is there anyone else who wants to speak on the BDS? Okay. So, just to be clear, just to what Mr. Limbrick said, we received this letter and proposed resolution. This was generated outside of us. We have informed. I spoke to one of the presenters at the last meeting, informed her that we would not be moving forward with this. There's no one on the Township Committee that wants to move this, so it won't be moving forward either for discussion or for action. So it's not an issue for us anymore. Humor.
Hi, David Humor, 26 Nelson Place. Thank you very much for your service, and as a longtime resident and a member of the library board, very pleased with the township's ongoing commitment over the years, funding well above the minimum required by law, and the commitment to this project. And on a one-on-one note, I want to single out the mayor, because library statutes in New Jersey indicate that a mayor can serve as a member of the board ex officio or send a designee. And in the 30 years I've lived here, Mayor DeLuca has been by far the most active and effective mayoral representative on the library board. Greatly appreciated, and this is continuing. We have a great opportunity here. Also, I was startled when I heard this. 1 out of 110 people in the world is a refugee. So whatever efforts you can make, and the refugee program through the UN, through the High Commissioner for Refugees, emphasizes that any of that kind of housing that you discussed tonight is of a temporary nature. So I trust you can come to a solution where we can actually help people, because there are people in the community willing to do it.
So what we've done is we've approved this resolution, so we've put the moratorium on, so the folks that we talked about can move forward.
Beautiful.
We just asked them to notify the building department, and Mr. Manning, you'll notify the building department to do this, and then we're just gonna have to make sure that whatever the housing is meets fire and safety codes,
Right.
That's all.
Right, very good.
And then, so we've approved this tonight. Mr. Desiderio suggests we approve it again January 2nd, so it'll be on the it'll be a resolution again on January 2nd, and it'll go through July 30th first, and we'll figure out some way to make this permanent.
Beautiful, thank you very much. And now I have a third issue, I don't know why, but I wanted to report, mostly because of circumstances, someone else is going to talk on this issue, but I wanted to tell you that the probably 75 to 85% of the work contracted under the Open Space Trust Fund on the paddle tennis courts has been completed. It's been of a very high quality. The courts are very safe. As you probably know, we now have 5 men's teams and 2 women's teams participating in Northwest New Jersey. It's like the library. This is a great advertisement for the town. People come here from other towns and are impressed, frankly, that there's a municipal commitment to a particular sport. And just to bring you up to date, so not only a big thank you from that community, but I think the community and Calvin Bell are working on finishing the rest of the project, and it's going great. And it was for a relatively low amount of money, a community in Maplewood is much better served. So thanks for that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else want to address the Township Committee? Seeing no one, will close the public hearing, and we'll move on to administrative reports. Mr. Manning.
I have one item, Mayor, and that is a request to hold a 5K in town on January 1st. And I wanted the Township Committee to see the request because it came through the normal process. And I'd like to kind of get input because I'm concerned myself regarding liability issues. Also, the day itself, I'm not sure. There are a lot of questions that are out there, and just wondered if you were aware of it or if anyone has been contacted to, get support for this, or, where are we going?
I have a question, Mr. Manning. It struck me, and maybe I'm wrong, that usually for an event like this that was going to require closing of streets, police personnel, et cetera, even for a time of year where the weather would likely be less dicey than in early January, that there'd be more notice. Am I incorrect?
Absolutely. Yes, traditionally we know months in advance because our 5Ks are run every year.
Right.
Same time. So this is a brand new one.
Right.
And last minute in terms of the time. I think we don't have enough time to really fully vet it and to get input. It'll be expensive. Who pays that? All those types of things.
Because we're talking about a holiday,
right?
Overtime and vacation schedules, and
it has to be done the night before, which is New Year's Eve. A lot of the preparation
will be. I mean, the cost that the chief has given us is about $1,300, and that's just at the $80 per hour.
Right.
And whether you can even get people on New Year's Day, is another issue. I just don't think this makes sense for us to approve. This is not like the July 4th event, which is part of a larger issue. I think the timing is in question also, so I would say that we should not approve this.
Yeah, I think if they want to come back with another date, further in the future, but I don't see how we can approve New Year's Day, particularly at this point.
Okay.
I'm with the mayor.
I think that's unanimous. The one big thing as a runner myself, that if we get snow, yeah, that's a problem right there.
Or ice.
Well, black ice is the worst as a runner, so.
Yeah, we're gonna have liability issues, we're gonna need to have, the fire department's gonna have the ambulances there,
Right.
And that day is busy for us as it is, and we'll need police for that day as well. So it's more time.
We'll ask them to rethink it and let's work together to find something.
This becomes an issue of cost too, because we've had, in budget time, we look at these things and as we get into more of these events and festivals, we've got to continue to do some cost sharing and just,
correct.
This is a lot of money, $1,300 for us to provide the police.
Right.
Plus there's insurances and all that stuff too, so, okay. Mr. Manny, anything else?
Not for me.
Is the farmer's market done?
I think so. I was there the other day. I didn't see anybody. Yeah, I'm a little sad.
Okay. Mr. Desiderio?
I have no report, Mayor.
Ms. Fritzen?
2 quick items. You've been getting pretty good turnaround on the board and committee responses. So I gave you the bulk of them, and now as they're coming in, you're getting them daily, weekly.
We'll deal with that at the next meeting.
Next meeting, Mayor?
Next, and closed, yes.
Okay. My other item is quick. Just, we have on the books as an ordinance, we have plenary distribution licensees, the liquor stores, that when Christmas Eve and New Year's Eve fall on a Sunday, they have 2 hours on either end that they can remain open. So I'll be notifying all of our licensees. They can go 2 hours ahead of time, open at 10, and stay open till 8 p.m. when Christmas Eve and New Year's Eve fall on a Sunday.
And we have an ABC license hearing on the 19th?
Yes, we do. And I will, again, contact Mr. Montero and his client.
Well, the hearing is for what purpose, Ms. Fritzen? Have they cleared up all of their issues with the state?
They have. And our hearing at this point would be
Just
to consider reinstatement of the license.
okay. So they are. We going to get something from the state that says they're otherwise in good standing? Could we get that?
I can get that.
Okay. And
But
then
I
we
know
just-
all their fees are current with the township.
Because we had that series of sequential events that had to take place. That's all done. So the only impediment they have right now is the suspension that the township has placed on them.
Correct.
Okay. But they are not prepared to open.
No,
So what is it they're seeking to do at this hearing?
they're seeking for the Maplewood local ABC to give consent to.
And effectively, it'll be a pocket license at that location.
That's correct. Any other questions on that?
Is that it? Thank you. Okay, reports from elected officials. Mr. McGehee.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, really quick, I'd like to first recognize 3 committees in our town that have stood up to come and support our businesses on Springfield Avenue. YouthNet is going to have their final meeting, their holiday meeting at Cornbread. The Green Team will be having their final meeting at Wollabon, the Haitian restaurant, Springfield Avenue. And the Community Coalition on Race is also taking up the challenge, and we'll be having their holiday meeting at Cornbread as well. So I'd like to recognize those 3 organizations, committees, publicly for deciding to invest in their community and having their meetings at these great restaurants. In terms of other meetings happening, the Environmental Advisory Committee is meeting tomorrow, 7:30 p.m. at the library. It's an open meeting, and anyone interested in joining that team potentially should come and attend the meeting. And finally, because I was unable to do it last Saturday, I will have office hours for an hour from 4:30 to 5:30 at the Maplewood Grill. That is my report, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Lindbergh.
I have no report, Mr. Mayor.
I have a few things. Number one, anybody still watching who's looking for a job or looking to think about having your resume looked at by HR professionals, we're having a job fair at the library tomorrow from 10 a.m. to noon. It's sponsored by DCH, Milburn, and the Maplewood Library. This is another example of the town and the library working with local businesses. We're trying to get folks in our community jobs locally. We did that with Wawa too, very successfully. So that's again 10 a.m. to noon. Want to report, I received a letter from Avalon Bay. They've made a contribution to of ShopRite gift cards to the St. Joseph's Parish, the food bank there. So just want to let you know that that happened. Duran Hedden is having a gingerbread house competition. So Mr. Yui, you can dust off your baking skills. So you can contact them at duranhedden.org. Today, a number of mayors and Essex County Executive Joe D., we sent a letter to Governor-elect Murphy asking him to support the extension of the 2% interest arbitration cap. Very important for us. This is keep our interest, our arbitration cases down to a reasonable level of 2% and allow us to keep within the budget constraints that we face. On Wednesday, December 13th, the Maplewood Concert Band is having its annual concert at the Bergdorf Center for the Performing Arts. That's at 7:30 p.m. Monday, we started the new traffic pattern at Tuscan School. Yes. I was there today with Chief Gaval at early morning, and things were running very well. It has really worked. We clearly have 3 or 4 police officers there now. He is making a few adjustments. We did get an email from a resident who suggested it. He is making those adjustments. So it seems to be working well and should be working well once the police presence leaves. I think people will be used to that. We start Monday with a new traffic pattern at the middle school. So that's going to be good. The Springfield Avenue Partnership issued the RFPs for the public art project. It's called Our Community Looking Forward, and you can find that information out at the Springfield Avenue Partnership website. One thing is we want to announce that tomorrow night the Public Safety Committee is having a meeting at 106 Burnett with members of Some Action and others from the community to talk about police community relations and the establishment of a citizens advisory board or committee of some sort. And lastly, I just want to say I was proud, and I'm sure we're all proud as those who have signed on to a friend of the court brief. The Masterpiece Cake Shop case was heard in the Supreme Court today, and I think we were on the right side of history. There's been some really good reporting in the New York Times about the arguments on both sides and some op-eds. And so we were there, again, the only town governing body, and I was the only mayor in New Jersey to sign on. So we get some good things out of that. So hopefully it'll go our way. And with that, unless anyone wants to talk about the firing of the Giants coaches and general managers, no?
Really, no. But I did want to remind that we have a holiday tree lighting this Sunday.
Sunday, 3 to 5 p.m. It's up at the gazebo on Springfield Avenue. Thank you. And with that, can we get a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
All in favor? Aye. Thank you very much.